All right, guys, welcome to episode 9 of Out of the Shadows. So, today's episode is titled Leap of Faith. The main point of this episode is to talk about we all have this feeling that when we're ready, we'll go back to our life. We'll start doing things, we'll start accomplishing things. And this just doesn't go for people who deal with depression. I think this is for anyone. If you're your average person, you're like, all right, well, when I'm ready, I'm going to start that new business, or when I'm ready, I'm going to start this project, I'm going to start that diet, I'm going to start meditating. Whatever it is, you have these things that you're going to do when you're quote unquote ready. And the reality of the situation is we're never ready. There's never going to be a feeling where you're like, all right, now I'm ready. I'm ready. I can go start doing all the things I want to do. I can pursue my dreams. I can start to feel better if I'm dealing with depression. I'm in this ready state. That doesn't exist. There's no feeling that's going to come to you and now you can accomplish everything. It's not how it works, unfortunately. And I actually got this idea. I recently watched the animated Spider-Man movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and the main character, Miles Morales, the younger Spider-Man, asks the original Spider-Man, "How will I know when I'm ready?" And Peter Parker, the original Spider-Man, says, "You won't. It's a leap of faith." And I 100% agree with this. It's a leap of faith to start doing things, to start facing these fears. Like I said, you're not going to feel ready. And the truth is, the only way to really start to feel better and to get to a place where you feel perhaps more ready or more capable of doing these things is to start facing your fears. And by facing fears that are smaller, eventually then you can face the bigger fears. Now, it's a very simple way of putting it. So what do I mean? Let's say you're afraid to ask a coworker out on a date. You're interested in her. And you're super nervous about it. You're afraid that she's going to reject you, or what if she does? It's going to be awkward around the workplace, all these things. And let's say that's a relatively small fear in the grand scheme of things in your life. Now let's say you're thinking about quitting your job and you want to start a business. That's pretty big. There's a reason to be scared of that. So if you can find it in yourself, or I shouldn't say if, so you find it in yourself, you decide, you know what, I'm going to ask out this coworker. I'm going to see if he or she is interested, depending upon your gender and your sexual orientation. And you go and you ask them out, and whatever happens, happens. Even if they say no or they're not interested, that's fine. It doesn't even have to be awkward. It's just you gave it a shot. That's what really matters. It's not about always getting the yes or always winning in a sense. If you did it and you gave it your best and you did all the right things, so to speak, you won, in my opinion. You don't, in some ways, winning is a relative definition. If you tried your hardest, you did what you were, or what you expected yourself to do, then you won. You succeeded. It's not a failure in my book. So, like I said, you're going to be afraid to do these things. You're going to be afraid to maybe apply to school or apply to a job or join a dating site or start to diet or start to meditate or yoga or any kind of a regular regimen, whether that's to ensure your physical health or your mental health. Because as I said in the last episode, maintaining your mental health, no matter who you are, again, you don't have to be someone who's experiencing or has experienced depression or anxiety. Everyone has to do something to maintain their mental health. In order to be in a good place, in order to be more peaceful, more calm, less anxious, happier, you have to do things. You have to, socialize with people you care about. You have to have conversations about your feelings, your aspirations, your desires. You have to have good relationships in your life. You have to do things that give you energy. You have to, as I explained in more detail in the last episode, it's more than just you went to therapy one time or a doctor gave you a prescription and you took it for a week. It's not how it works. It's a constant process, just like keeping up your physical health. And in my opinion, you need to do both. They complement one another. if you're doing really well physically, if you're exercising, if you have a really good diet, you're going to feel better mentally. And conversely, or maybe I should say in the reverse, if you're doing really well mentally, you have really good relationships in your life, you're feeling very happy, you're ambitious, you're accomplishing things, you're going to feel more of an urge and a drive to start to improve your physical health. So it's synergistic. Both of them need to be there. Absolutely. I truly, truly believe that. There was a TED Talk that I watched a few years ago that I want you guys to take a look at. It was, the woman's name is Jessica, and I could be saying her last name wrong, Gimeno. It's Gimeno. The talk was called How to Get Stuff Done When You Are Depressed. And that's something that, no, a lot of therapists aren't going to sit down and tell you, all right, when you're feeling super depressed, here's what you need to do. You're going to have discussions, you're going to have talks about what tactics you should use, but when you're really down, really depressed, and you just don't want to do anything, there's not a whole lot out there as to, well, what do I do when I feel that bad? This TED Talk addresses that. Now, this woman has had a lot of difficulties in her life. She has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2. The difference is with bipolar disorder 1, which most people are familiar with, it's cycling, the highs and the lows. The high end being mania, when you are extremely energetic, you're not sleeping much. Often you're getting a lot accomplished, but you're engaging in very risky behaviors. You're not quite as logical and rational as you should be. You feel almost superhuman. The low end is depression. We all typically get what that is. You feel extremely hopeless, sad, lack of motivation, all those things. Bipolar disorder 2, the difference is the high end of it is hypomania, essentially meaning it's a smaller form of mania. So the highs are less intense. You're probably sleeping a little bit more. It's less obvious to people that you're acting out of character. So the highs are there, but they're not quite as extreme. This being the case, she dealt with a lot of depression, because with bipolar disorder, no matter which one you're dealing with, you deal with the low end of it, the depression. She managed to graduate with 2 majors, and she co-founded an organization to help students who are depressed. Those things right there, if you're clinically depressed, to accomplish all of that is extremely, extremely impressive. Now, she dealt with more than simply a mental health issue. She had several illnesses. One that she mentioned is, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, myasthenia gravis. I could be mispronouncing that. It's a autoimmune neuromuscular disease. I believe it is similar to muscular dystrophy. Forgive me for consulting my notes. Essentially, though, your muscles don't work the way they're supposed to. They can give out. It's an extremely difficult thing. It's far beyond, I have a bad shoulder or I have a bad knee or something that you can kind of work around and physical therapy and almost cure that situation. This is an ongoing thing that's going to be a problem in your life. She tells a story of how when she was first diagnosed, she was a student. She was walking down the stairs and her legs gave out. She fell down the stairs, which that wouldn't be a good time, obviously. And she said she couldn't get up and people were just walking over her, walking past her. First of all, that's ridiculous and disgusting, in my opinion. There's a psychological phenomenon. There's a name for it. I don't recall what it is. But we all we only do what everyone else is doing, what's kind of socially acceptable or what's considered normal. So if everyone's walking by someone who's in trouble or hurt or whatever, we just keep on walking because that's what you're quote unquote supposed to do. Now, like I said, I get it's a thing, it's recognized in psychology, but in those situations, if you see someone in trouble, you see someone who might be hurt or whatever, stop and help them, or at least ask them, are you okay? Can I call someone? Do those things. You're going to be out of the norm or breaking the social whatever, but absolutely do that. That is a time when it's a bullshit rule of society. There's there's no rule that says you can't help somebody. You should help somebody. That's a situation where you're going against the grain, but you're doing it in a very productive and good way. That point aside, so she's facing this physical illness. She's facing a mental illness. She also mentioned a few other things. Psoriasis was one of them. I can't remember the other two, but these were big challenges. These weren't things that you just, here, I'm going to take a couple of pills, a couple of Advil, I'll be fine tomorrow. No, these are lifelong illnesses to deal with, and that's a lot. Having one is bad enough. Having 5, I believe she said, is quite a bit. Now, what I liked is how she talked about how she would deal with these things. Every morning, she said she would wake up, listen to Eye of the Tiger, and put on boxing gloves and pray for the strength to get through the day. Now, your religious beliefs aside, in my opinion, and I've talked about Rocky in these videos, so my kind of girl, you're listening to something that's motivational. She's putting on boxing gloves. You're getting yourself into that mindset of like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to fight this. I don't care if it's hard. Let's go. It's not easy to do. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do sometimes. But in order to succeed, it's the mindset you have to slowly be able to adopt. Now, as I said, the main point of the talk is to discuss how to get things done when you're depressed. She addresses 3 specific areas. She says you need to be proactive, you need to determine how urgent something is, and how difficult it is. Proactivity meaning as soon as you start to feel depressed, call your therapist, call your psychiatrist if you have one, start exercising more, start doing things that are going to make you less depressed, so you're attacking the problem while it's small. In terms of urgency, it's just what it sounds like. If you have a lot of things to do, decide what's most urgent. What do I have to get done now? If you have a project for work that needs to be done by the end of the week, if you have a school paper that's due in 2 days or whatever, those are most urgent. Address those first. So you're breaking down your problems into smaller problems, smaller bites, for lack of a better way to put it. And lastly, the difficulty. So if you have a few things to do, let's say, I need to wash the dishes, I need to go and get my car inspected and registered for the next year, and I have to call about my student loans. Now, more than likely, the student loan call is going to be the most difficult because you're going to be on the phone a while, it's going to be back and forth. That's the most difficult. So, I would say start with the easiest thing and work your way up. I can't remember if that's her exact advice. I'm going to link her video below. Please go check that out. It's amazing. It's wonderful. So another thing I wanted to get to, I feel like the key to getting better is to address your feelings, to address your past. And I think in psychology today, it's kind of frowned upon almost. They don't want you to focus on the past, which, should you live in the past? Absolutely not. Should you acknowledge the past and be able to process things that happened in the past? Yes, I absolutely think you should. If you ignore the past and it's, all these things happen, but that's not affecting me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. If you went through any kind of difficulty or any kind of trauma in your childhood, it's likely shaped who you are as a person. And trauma doesn't have to be something so extreme as physical abuse or sexual abuse or mental abuse. Your trauma could simply be your parents were always late picking you up from football practice. So you developed the thought process, or the belief rather, that you can't rely on other people. That could be your trauma. And those are the little things that shape our beliefs, shape how we interact with people in the world. And in my opinion, if you don't acknowledge those, you're going to be limited. Too much of therapy today becomes too mechanical. It's they teach you techniques like in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's changing your thoughts, changing your behaviors, and you need to do those things. But if you're not able to talk about your feelings, and I'm not even talking about just the past, just your feelings in general about what's going on in your life, if that's not incorporated, it becomes this academic process, and you're just going through the motions. And if you're just going through the motions with anything, you're going to be less effective, if not completely ineffective. You have to be in it. Your heart has to be in it. You have to be actively going through these things. So I really think that it's important to focus on your feelings. things that have happened to you. For me, until I did this, there were a lot of roadblocks in my life. Until I was able to go back and see, like, all right, well, when I was a child, I was told either directly or indirectly that my opinion wasn't important. So I developed low self-esteem or low self-confidence. And by going back and seeing that, I could be like, all right, well, I was a child, I didn't really understand. I formed this belief that's not necessarily accurate. You can start to poke holes in it, you start to break down the foundation, and you can form new and empowering beliefs after doing this. If you don't figure out where a belief came from and start to break down, all right, well, this is why it's not true, I think it's a lot harder to change a belief. If you don't know why you're changing, you're just like, well, this is a negative belief, I need to have a positive one. It's not that simple. You have to be like, all right, well, this belief is negative, and here's why it's not true. That way you can form a new belief, positive belief, empowering one, etc., etc. All right, I'd like to close this episode with a quote, actually. I was watching a show on Netflix. It's called Derek. Ricky Gervais wrote and stars in it. In one of the last episodes, his character doesn't know how to ride a bike, so he's trying to learn. He falls off, and the character Derek's friend Kev tells him, hey, get up. First rule, always get up. And I think that's a rule for life. Always get up. No matter how hard something is, no matter how hard you metaphorically get hit, always get up. The more you can get up and try again and continue to try, the more resilient you become, the more things you can accomplish. So keep that in mind. As always, guys, please, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments, questions, general comments, thoughts for future episodes. Please leave them below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you all next week.